We knew this was gonna happen. Clickbaity thumbnails and headlines and titles. Twitter overreactions, recency bias. You know Kendrick Perkins is gonna say whatever clickbaity thing comes to his head first. Alright, this is just insane. What? Alright. Okay, Twitter. You got it, Twitter. The consensus about the Celtics is really negative right now. Everybody's overreacting, in my opinion. And they're just reacting in a negative light, and they think the Celtics should tear everything down. And I think we need to stop overreacting and take 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 steps back and just look at the full picture. So here's what actually happened. Game 7, Celtics just got outplayed. Simply put, they didn't show up. They did not perform well. Jimmy responded really well to his Game 6 disappointing performance. Caleb Martin, consistent as hell. Bam didn't really play well on the offensive end, but he displayed a defensive masterclass, and the Heat role players simply hit their threes. Gabe Vincent, Duncan Robinson, Max Strus, and the like. We can't diminish Miami's accomplishment. 8 seed going to the NBA championship after that heartbreaking Game 6. A lot of people thought they were going to come out and fold, have no energy, but they responded. Give them credit. I just want to get that out the way because this video is not about them. Now, finally getting to Boston. I forgot which commentator said this. They lost every game in which the pressure was on them to win. Game 1 and 2, you're the 1 seed, you have home court advantage, you drop both of them. So you're down 2-0 going to Miami, knowing that no team in NBA history has gone down 3-0, and you drop Game 3. At that point, everybody is viewing the series as over, done and dusted. There's no pressure on Boston. They've basically lost in everybody's eyes. And when the pressure's off of them, they win every single game. Until they get to Game 7, going back home. They are the more talented team going back home. I'm pretty sure they were the odds-on favorite to win. The pressure was back on them. And Game 7 in itself, with excluding all the other factors, is pressure in itself. And when the pressure was back on, they kind of folded. Pivoting to X's and O's and I guess coaching, putting the focal point on Joe Mazzulla, I mean, he made no mistake about it. This team made no mistake about it. They were going to live or die by the 3-ball. And the 4 games that they lost, they died by way of the 3-ball. In all 4 losses against Miami, they shot 10 for 29, 10 for 35, 11 for 42, and 9 for 42, combining for, in losses, 40 for 148 from 3, shooting 27%. And I'm pretty sure after every loss in which Joe was asked pretty much what was the main reason why the Celtics lost the game, he responded by saying, simply didn't make enough shots.
What happened down the stretch?
I thought we got good looks. Just didn't think we made them.
It seemed like after the first 6 minutes, something changed.
We shot 21% from 3.
Now, I mean, in a way, I guess this answer is true and false. There's some truth to it because I guess in every game, if they make 3 to 5 more threes, mathematically, they would win the game because that's 9 to 15 more points added to their total. So simply put, by the numbers, yeah, if they made more threes, they would have won those games. But in my opinion, that's kind of a cop-out answer because as a head coach, obviously your coaching ability is not only strictly measured by wins and losses. It's your ability to adapt. Because any team can win 50 games and go to the playoffs. The top tier coaches and the ones that have success in the postseason are those that adapt. And clearly, Joe Mazzulla showed no willingness to adapt. He basically attributed every loss to just missing more shots from 3. And when he was asked if they needed to diversify their offensive attack, take less threes, make a focal point of getting to the rim.
Is this team too reliant on the 3-point shot? Does that have to change?
No.
He said no. Simply put, he said no. I don't know if he's just being like that to the media and he didn't really want to dive into his offensive game plan in a public presser. But I mean, numbers don't lie. They stuck with shooting as many threes as possible. And in those 4 games, they missed quite a few of them. And yeah, if you really want to have success in the postseason, when a team takes away something, it may even be your bread and butter. When they take that away from you, you got to be able to adjust and adapt and still find success. That's what you have to do. That's what you have to do as a coach. You got to be able to put your team in the best opportunity to win games, even when what you're prioritizing is taken away. Kind of reminds me of the Bucks from 2018 to 2020. Year in and year out, top 3 seed, 50-win seasons, probably some 60-win seasons in there as well, a lot of 1 seeds, and a lot of playoff disappointment, because oftentimes, whether it was the Boston Celtics early on or the Toronto Raptors in 2019, Miami Heat in 2020, Eric Spoelstra, Nick Nurse, they knew what Budenholzer and company were trying to do, and Budenholzer showed no willingness to adjust, and that was the constant criticism of Budenholzer as a head coach, and that's why the questions were thrown up whether the Bucks could win a championship with Budenholzer at the helm. Pivoting to the personnel, like the players themselves, I want to get the injuries out the way. I think the Malcolm Brogdon injury was key, though he didn't miss. I don't think he missed a single game. If he did miss a game, he only missed 1, but I don't think he missed a single game. But it's clear he was compromised. This was the 6th man of the year, and we know the impact Brogdon can have on our offense. He's a tempo establisher. He can establish some order in an offense, especially when there's chaos or just a constant flow of negative things happening to your offense. If it's just in a state of staleness, having a steady hand like Malcolm Brogdon at the point guard position is beneficial, and him being somewhat compromised really impacted their offense this series. And then Jason's injury in Game 7, he said he was a shell of himself. He looked the part. He looked like a shell of himself. But I mean, at this point in the playoffs, you can't really attribute anything to injuries when, on the other side of things, the Heat are without 20 points per game in Tyler Hero and a key rotational piece in Victor Oladipo, and they're making the NBA Finals. So, and if there is a team to withstand significant injuries to key rotational pieces, that team is Boston, because they're stacked in terms of talent and depth. In spite of the loss, this team is probably still the most talented and deep team in the entire league. Can't really scapegoat injuries on this one if you're Boston. Now, actually diving into personnel, I want to start with the point guard play. Now, it's Derek White, Marcus Smart, and Malcolm Brogdon all play point guard at some point in the season. Oftentimes, one of them is playing the 2 guard because the other one is in. But they all have playmaking responsibilities and have had them throughout the regular season and the postseason. Now, JJ Redick alluded to this perfectly as one of the few holes in Boston's personnel. Somebody that can just be a downhill paint penetrator. Pause if I have to, but that's something that was missing. Now, Marcus Smart has improved as a playmaker since his rookie year. It wasn't really a strong suit for him coming out of Oklahoma State, I think 7 or 8 years ago, and he's become a much more efficient and prolific playmaker. But he's more so just a decision maker, not somebody who's going to put constant pressure on the primary defender and draw help defense in the paint. Now, Derek White is a little bit better at that than Marcus Smart, but at the end of the day, it is Derek White, and this is why the compromisation of Malcolm Brogdon's health was more of a contributing factor. Talking about the bigs, because I want to save Jason and Jalen for last. Al Horford is good at what he's been asked to do these past couple years. Being a stretch 5, a tertiary playmaker, he's a really good playmaker for a big, really good high IQ passer, high IQ defender, tough, plays hard. He's really good at those things. But I mean, when you're playing this heliocentric offense of as many threes as possible, you're putting the onus on him to shoot as many threes as possible, and you're turning him into a stretch 5. He's an above average 3-point shooter, shooting, I think, like 60% of his field goal attempts were from 3-point land or something like that, and that's not really going to work to his betterment. We know what we have from Al Horford at this point. Robert Williams is mainly who I want to talk to, because he's I think he's like 24 or 25, and he's still kind of like the young prospect on this team, because I think Robert Williams still has a ceiling that he hasn't reached yet. It's tough to see him only getting 23 or 24 minutes, sometimes less than that on any given night, because in 3 to 4 minute stretches, you really see the impact that he has. I mean, in Game 7, at different points of the entire Heat Celtics series, he was the best defender on Jimmy Butler. That man was in a straitjacket. He was in jail. Jimmy Butler could not figure out Robert Williams, a fucking 6'9", 250 plus pound center, was clamping up Jimmy Butler. That just speaks to the defensive impact that Robert Williams has as a dynamic rim protector and somebody that can switch on the outside and guard somebody who is being called Jimmy Jordan that put up 50 on Drew Holiday in the first round. Like, he was able to have that type of impact on Jimmy Butler, but for one reason or another, he's not playing high minutes. I don't know if it's a fatigue thing, a exhaustion thing, or a fear of him getting injured again because of his inconsistent durability. But I mean, I think Robert Williams still has some upside, and I think a key way for the Boston Celtics to improve internally will be prioritizing the playing time of Robert Williams. Now lastly, I can talk about the Jays. Starting with Tatum, not really going to harp on him too much. Game 7, he was compromised. I will say that if he wants to be one of those guys that can lead a championship team, like your Steph Currys, Kawhi, Bron, KD, Giannis, and you know what, I'm going to throw Jokic in there. I have a bias because Jokic is my favorite player in the league, but if he wants to be one of the guys, he's got to be more consistent in the playoffs, simply put. Now, as for Jaylen Brown, one of my closer friends is actually a Jaylen Brown fan, borderline stan. I mean, he was in this guy's bandwagon since he came out of Cal in 2016, and I was like, bruh, Jaylen Brown fan? But hey, it's paid off because he's turned into an All-NBA player. And over the past 3 or 4 years, there have been conversations as to whether he could be better than Jason Tatum, if he could be the best player on a contending team, because he's had his fair share of performances where he stepped up, and Jason has been pretty disappointing, mainly the 2022 finals. Now, that being said, you can't really have it both ways. You can't have this constant praise when Jason Tatum has his down games where people view you as maybe better than Jason Tatum. At the same time, you can't have it where when you have an off game where you're 4 for 14 from the field with 15 points and you don't get any criticism at all. That's happened quite a few times over the past 3 years, in which Jaylen Brown will have an abysmal game, and if it was Jason Tatum in those shoes, he'd get absolutely crucified. You can't have it both ways. Now, Game 7 was the perfect opportunity for him to step up and prove that he could be the guy. I don't think he'll ever be viewed as better than Jason Tatum, but Game 7, where Tatum obviously was not himself and wasn't going to be able to operate to the best of his ability, that was his stage, and he folded. Something that's been talked about Jaylen's game, Jaylen and Jason, it's been playmaking, but in particular Jaylen Brown, his ball handle, it's never been as tight as you would want for a second option on the perimeter, and that was at the forefront in Game 7. 8 turnovers, I think 4 or 5 of them simply was just him getting stripped off the dribble by whether it be Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo. 8 turnovers is ridiculous, and that's got to be something that he works on in the off season. Not just ball handling, but decision making in general, spotting help defenders and making the adequate pass, and just trusting his teammates a bit more, because it's not like he's playing with fucking Smush Parker, Luke Walton, and Devin George. Like, he has a lot of talent that he can kick the ball out to. So I said all of this about the Celtics, pretty critical of them and what happened in Game 7 and the series as a whole, but what should the Celtics actually do? Is Joe Mazzulla's reluctance to adjusting his offensive scheme a justification for firing him? Does yet another Eastern Conference Finals defeat warrant the splitting up of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown? Are Boston Celtics fans scumbags? Well, the answer to all of those questions is no. Well, except for the last one. Starting with Joe Mazzulla, this man is 34 years old. I don't think he's older than Al Horford. Obviously the youngest head coach in the entire league. This was his first season. He took over after the weirdest head coaching scandal in NBA history. Gets the 2 seed, 50 plus wins, and goes to the Eastern Conference Finals. I know they were down 3-0, but it was still a 7-game series. It went to 7. He was able to get his team to come back from 3. Oh, I guess he didn't come back from 3-0, but he tied it at 3 after going down 3-0. That's impressive. It's an impressive feat. Is it that bad to be outcoached by Eric Spoelstra in a Game 7? As a year 1 coach, only 34 years old, taking over a team after one of the weirdest head coaching scandals in NBA history. It's not all that bad. Does he deserve to be just, shielded from all criticism and blame? Of course not. But I mean, we can't just say that everything that Joe Mazzulla did to this point is not commendable, because he did a damn good job as a head coach, and he's only going to get better. Moving to Jalen and Jason and the idea of splitting them up. These guys are 25 and 26. Jason's 25, Jaylen Brown's 26. So they're only entering their primes right now in NBA years. Like 27 to 32, that's like viewed as the prime of an NBA career. Now, LeBron is an anomaly. Kevin Durant and Steph Curry are anomalies themselves, but they're entering what is generally viewed as the prime of an NBA career. LeBron didn't win a championship at the age of 27. Same thing with Steph. Same thing with Giannis. Kobe didn't win his first chip after Shaq until he was fucking 30. So I think we all gotta chill out on, we have to divide Jason and Jalen because they've been in the Eastern Conference Finals 5 times and have no chips to show for it. They haven't even entered their primes yet. So let's chill out on that just a tad bit. Or just that reasoning. Obviously, I'm not saying if you think you can get a better player than Jaylen Brown on this team that you think fits better, Brad Stevens, that you think fits better, then of course, go for that. But the idea that you just have to split Jalen and Jason for the simple fact of splitting them up because it hasn't worked, that's kind of asinine, in my opinion. I know as a culture, especially the social media age that we're in nowadays, we tend to overreact and just be prisoners of the moment. But yeah, I think we all need to chill out and give them a chance. I personally think that they can win a chip together, especially on a team that is as talented and deep as this current Boston Celtics team. I think everybody in their core is under contract except Grant Williams. That's going to be a big thing for Brad Stevens to grapple with. But I mean, Jalen's under contract next year. Jason, obviously. Brogdon, I'm pretty sure. Marcus Smart, Derek White, Al Horford, Robert Williams. They're all under contract for the next season. So I don't think we have to overreact at this point. To summarize everything, I think the Celtics need to prioritize internal development throughout the offseason. Joe Mazzulla, after his first year as a head coach, did a damn good job, but he still has to improve in terms of his ability to adjust and just show more of a willingness to adjust and develop some offensive game plans that aren't so predicated on just simply making threes. Have some diversity, have some flexibility, that if a team takes away one thing away from you, or you guys just simply aren't making open threes, that shouldn't be a point where you're like, oh yeah, we're gonna lose because we're not making threes. Like, no, adjust. Tatum has to become more of a consistent playoff performer if he wants to be looked at as one of the guys. We all should know what that means. And Jaylen Brown has to be better as a playmaker, decision maker, and tighten his handle over the offseason. And the Celtics team as a whole needs to just take their lick. They need to take their L, internalize it, use it as fuel going into the offseason and going into the 2023 to 2024 campaign.